Very good morning to you. You are watching Newsline this morning with me, Chathuranga Hapuarahchchi. We are going to talk to two authors today. They are Rozaine Cooray and Dr. Pujitha Silva. Now, this book, the book they have authored, is going to be a different publication because the tagline of this book is going to be growing stellar performance in organizations. Now, I'm going to ask them what is different in the book that they have done, the book they have authored, and how this will help to actually grow stellar performance in organizations. Good morning to you, and thank you both for being here. I'll start with Rozaine. Now, when you say Rockstars, it sounds like a cool name. It sounds like a cool thing that people would want to read and go through. But when you say also, when you put a tagline like growing stellar performers in organizations, then it becomes really serious and you understand this book is not messing about, this has a point. So what is the point that you're trying to raise from Rockstars?
We're trying to define who a rock star here is, and the word itself, rockstar, people may think that it is about having a fan club, about being a star, being in the limelight, but there's much more to that. Yeah. And I would invite the reader to find out the deeper meaning of what rockstar is. But why the seriousness of the tagline is, we are likening rock stars to leaders who actually can rally people around a cause that is larger than themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's basically the basic definition of what a rock star is.
Dr. Silva, now I'm just going through your details here, and I see a biomedical engineer, a certified life coach is the first line. So when you say a biomedical engineer, I want to ask you, before I get to the book itself, I want to ask you, what do you do as a biomedical engineer?
Well, engineering is about finding solutions. Biomedical engineer finds solutions for problems in the human body. So that's the shortest and the simplest way of saying it. Developing a device or anything that concerns the human body. That's what a biomedical engineer
And have you been able to get that knowledge into this book as well and help people see things in a different way?
The book is actually written in a way that it helps us to understand leadership principles.
Right.
And we have brought the human body as the model upon which certain leadership principles are based on. So from my biomedical engineering background, it allows me to have an understanding of how different organs work and how the body itself works as a system. So that comes through in the book.
Now, obviously, getting something like this is not an easy task. I'm asking you this at the very outset because I want you to be able to include your team as well in this conversation, though they're not here. Now, obviously, as I said, getting a book done is being done across the country. Lots of people write books, but this book is different, isn't it? And why do you say that this book is different? Rozaine?
I would say mainly because there is a leadership model, there's a coaching model behind this book. So we are trying to relate some leadership principles. But in business or management books, we get textbooks that mention about the leadership theories. But this book, what we wanted to do was, 4 years ago when Pujitha and I had this conversation, we wanted the layperson to be able to understand these principles in a very simple way. So what I did was, my role in this was, I took Pujitha's model and I weaved a novel around it. So this book is basically a story, but behind the story is actually a coaching model that one could use to grow performers or leaders.
Rozaine, now taking off from where we left off, now Rockstars, as the title itself is very cool sounding to me. I would want to read this book, but now you might have, as the authors of this book, you might have an age category that you're targeting, or a group of people that you're targeting for this book to reach. Where does that fall?
It's funny you ask this question, because when I wrote it in a form of a story, I thought this would be only relevant for organizations.
Right.
But the story unraveled in such a way in my mind that now even an A-level student, from an A-level student to a person who's nearing retirement could read and enjoy it. It's because the characters in the book presented themselves in such a way that they're highly relatable.
Right.
Right. It is a conversation that takes place between a semi-retired doctor who had lost his license and also a very ambitious young middle manager. So they walk on the beach every morning as a part of their exercise routine, and this conversation, the story is this conversation that takes place. So I would say the age category from a young person to a person who's in his retirement age.
Now, both of you all are very interesting people. Like we just found out that Dr. Pujitha Silva is a biomedical engineer and a life coach. You're a psychologist. And how have you all been able to get all of your knowledge that you've acquired with a lot of education, time, and all of that into this book?
I think we'll start with the passion we have. We both have a passion to develop people. We have a passion to actually see not just people but also communities actually being changed, and leadership development is at the heart of it. So when we put the book together, we brought in sort of our understanding, our knowledge and our experience from different areas. So Rozaine brought in her psychology, which gives her an understanding into human behavior. I brought in coaching, which is all about stepping people through the process of change, and also the engineering background, the biomedical engineering background gave an insight into the human body, which we are using here to describe the model.
If I put the same question to you, Rozaine?
I would say these sometimes endless conversations that you have with your clients, the organizations, that has given me a tremendous opportunity to understand human beings from a very unbiased point of view, because I'm not attached to an organization. I go in as a consultant, so that has given me an advantage. So when I started to write this book in that particular model, it's a 9-step model, I was able to understand human behavior in each and every box, each and every category, and I'm humbled by the fact that I had the opportunity to work with people in the past. So it's not only just knowledge; it's also your experience throughout the years.
When y'all are taking this book and reaching the general public, I'm told that you all have a separate way of doing this. You are targeting separate sectors. The medical sector, the education sector, so on and so forth. If you're able to tell me how you all plan on getting this book across, Pujitha?
So the book is written, as Rozaine mentioned, on the basis of a model. Now this model is transferable to different sectors. So the book itself is written with organizations in mind, but the book can also apply to sectors like education, sectors like health, or community development. So what we plan is, as a first step, actually to make the book available across all sort of boundaries for people to be able to read it. Then behind that, we have a plan to actually develop people, because this book talks about a process of development. So we want to be able to develop different people who will actually be the advocates of the message that is in the book, to take it into different sectors. Interestingly,
just because this says Rockstars, this does not have to, as you said, limit itself to a certain age category. It's applicable to everyone, is what you're trying to say.
That's right.
Now, going back to where you started off, when you decided, yes, I have the story, I want to get this into a book and get the next step done. Where did both of you all start? How did this all work out? Let's go back to the start. We'll start with you.
It's funny you asked that question, because I think the model is what brought us together. At that time we were both single. We wanted to publish a scientific paper based on this model. And so Pujitha proposed that we work together to validate this model. It actually started then in 2011. But before that, Pujitha has done so much of research based on the human body and this model. So when I went in, I brought a different perspective in terms of human behavior, how it applies to the different boxes.
Right from the beginning, in writing the book, we wanted it to, as Rozaine said, be relatable.
Yeah.
So we had the model, we knew what we wanted to say, but how to say it was something that we had to kind of work out over a period of time. So I think that's where Rozaine sort of wove her magic.
Rozaine, I want to ask you now, we've been speaking a bit about this book and what is included in this book, but we also know that the book has been launched last week. Where is this book available now?
So it's available in all the major bookshops like Vijayapa Sarasavi and also Barefoot. You can also order it through Kapruka, and it's also available on Amazon. And
you all are not limiting this book to the local market. You want this to be an international publication as well, because at the end of the day, leaders are born all over the world. Pujitha?
That's right, because I think the message here is universal, and I think it's relatable to any community or any culture. It's written in a way that people can take it and adopt it to their own culture or to their own sector.
Rozaine, if I am to ask you now, we know this book right now, and if I am to ask you, out of the two of you all, who worked most for the book?
I will let Pujitha answer that.
It's like how you would build a building. The foundation needs to go up, go in before the walls come up.
Yeah.
So I would say I did more the foundational work, but then a foundation alone is not attractive.
True.
It's really the walls and then the shape of the house that actually. So Rozaine did most of that in weaving the story and making this model come alive.
Now there is a bit more of an interesting story there, Rozaine, because you all are actually husband and wife, and you all have got together and done this book, and it's a challenge for you because you have to live what you have written down. So how has that worked out for you in your personal life?
Tough. We have to, I think, personally step up, and we have to face our own biases, especially when you write about certain things about human maturity. First, you need to ask yourself, am I qualified to even say this? Right? So you need to prove to yourself first that you can live it before you can tell that to somebody else. So we had to really toughen up in that way. And Pujitha and I, as similar as we are in our value system, our working styles are very different. So we did face conflict, but how we resolved that conflict, the controversies between us, I think really molded us as a couple and also as individuals. So
the work that you all do you all go as a team or do you all go as individuals? How do you get to what you do as a life coach and as a psychologist? How do you get things done as a team or as individuals? So sometimes clients approach us individually, but based on the client's needs, we tailor-make the solution. Then we get the coaches from our team, the most appropriate, suitable coaches on board to deliver that solution. Sometimes they call both of us, so it really depends. Pujitha, how is what you do different from what she does? And when you say life coach, a new concept to me personally and might be to our viewers as well. For those of us who do not know what you do, how is it different from a psychologist and what you do?
Okay, so a coach is primarily a person who would actually be focused on improving the performance of a person. So it could be related to work, it could be related to a life issue, time management, anything like that. So a coach is able to, how he does it is important. Normally we can relate to the idea of a sports coach who would be driving the person towards maximizing their performance. But a life coach is someone who would do it in the form of a conversation, without advising, without telling. They are able to ask the right questions and be able to draw the person out of maybe what we call their limiting beliefs. Most of the time why we are limited is something to do with how we think, how we have framed the world. So coach is able to more act like a mirror, reflect it, ask the right questions, and then allow the person himself to come with their own solutions.
Right. Rozaine, why have you decided to go in and look at organizations first? Why is this? Why is the tagline "Growing Stellar Performance in Organizations"? Why not elsewhere?
Okay, firstly, my specialization is in organizational psychology. So I felt I have to start from a place of strength and experience. So when Pujitha came along and we evaluated this model, we felt that in terms of performance, if we can actually take it to organizations first, then we would have a model that we could maybe replicate in communities as well. And what is probably, I feel what's encouraging so far is that whilst doing this to organizations, we also have worked with communities. We have validated this model in the education sector and also post-war communities. So that has also given us a tremendous encouragement that this actually works.
True. If I may add something to that. If you really think about impact, where can you have the greatest impact towards changing a country? I would say organizations have a big part to play in it. People spend most of their time in an organization doing something. And if you really look at even our country, if you look at the word productivity, there are many productivity killers. So if we are able to empower people in organizations, create the right kind of leadership, I believe those organizations themselves will start to perform better, which means you're feeding so many families, you're empowering so many families. And so together, I believe that would be a way of changing or contributing to change in the country. So we felt organizations needed to be the first place to start.
Both of you all, as authors and as individuals who do what you do, what is your next step going to be in terms of this particular project that you're carrying out, ROCKSTARS, was it?
We have a team that we are developing. So we also understand that we can't be experts in all the areas. So we want to actually invite people from different sectors who carry the same sort of passion and the burning to really go and bring about transformation in those communities or sectors. So the next step would be to get these coaches and train these coaches, send them off to different areas, get them to validate this model in these areas, and try and see how they can make a difference in those sectors.
Pujitha, this is not something that you want to stop here. Continuing from what Rozaine has to say, same question to you as well, as a couple and as business partners, if I may put it that way. Where do you intend on taking your project? To be
really honest, I think seeing our country transformed is the #1 purpose in writing a book like this. And I think we are a long way from there. And as Rozaine mentioned, but if we could systematically look at maybe areas, segments that will need to be transformed, you realize then there's a great need for leaders to be developed in those areas. So our focus is going to be on developing the right caliber of leaders who can take this forward. Now in saying that, we don't know the answers to every problem that lies in every segment or every sector, which is why we believe that this also has to be research based. So as they learn more, they will come and kind of add to that pool of knowledge and other people can learn from that. So this has to be a group effort in moving forward. So we are building the infrastructure for to be able to facilitate that move.
Rozaine, coming back to this book, you said you all initially started around 2011, but you also told me personally that the writing of this book was for about 4 years. I want to ask you the minor details of how long you took to get this done, this final product that we have before us.
So the research actually started with our team 4 years ago. This is like the 8th or the 9th draft. It took quite a bit of time to be really confident enough to say, okay, this is our last product and this is ready to go out. And that is, once again, is because we felt along the way that we were tested. So every time we thought like, oh, okay, this is good enough, something came along that, you know, life actually did test us. And we had to prove to ourselves that we are ready. We can actually live some of these things that we are talking about in the book. So I believe that really prolonged the process. But we are now in a place, as Pujitha mentioned, we are not perfect and we do not come across as gurus, but we are more here to introduce a particular model. We know that works. It works for us as a couple, as a family. It works in the organizations. We have validated that. It also works in the education system and also the communities. So this is a way of actually inviting the reader to read it and see how they can maybe take some of these lessons to whatever the communities that they are a part of.
Pujitha, this does not have to go into one person 100%. That person can take 10% out of it or 75% out of it. That's the idea.
Absolutely. Depending on their life stage, this relates to different people differently, and we are mindful of that. To an A-level student, this would relate differently to an organizational head. And so there's a lot of emphasis here on mentoring, something that is probably like a lost art at this point in time. But we see the value of bringing mentoring into the organizations, and by mentoring we mean helping another person to become all they can be without feeling insecure or threatened. So if we can bring that into the organizations, I think we would have done something right.
You brought in an interesting way of explaining to me what you do and what Pujitha does as an example. If I can share the same with our viewers, that would be great. As a psychologist, what you do, and as a life coach, where Pujitha stands. If you are able to give me that explanation one more time.
So as a psychologist, I'm trained to support people who maybe due to a life event who's not functioning probably I would say normally, somebody who's anxious or somebody who's depressed, to help them to pull themselves up back to normalcy. As a psychologist, I'm trained to do that. And coaching is actually to take somebody who's perfectly okay, who's completely happy with his life, but to help them push themselves to a greater level so that he could be the best he could become. But having said that, as a psychologist, I sometimes bring some of this knowledge into the coaching arena, and Pujitha does from the coaching arena to helping people to address their different belief systems.
Pujitha, now interestingly, I got to know that you all are husband and wife, you all are a couple halfway into the show, but you all seem to be people who have gone through what is in here, researched what you have done, and actually lived through almost everything that is mentioned in the book. Though I have not read the book first, this is the first copy I have received. I'm very interested in going through what is mentioned here. My question to you is very simple. Now we see a lot of people, you've met a lot of people. Rozaine mentioned that she has met about 700 people who have gone through your type of coaching and your training. My question to you is, people do not fall into almost all the time into one category. They are varied, there are various people. So when you write a book like this, how do you be confident that this will work in the society?
Okay, so if I can maybe understand what you're saying, how do you make the book
work
for different people, categories? Yeah. So so the model itself is actually a transformational model. So if we were to look at maybe how you can bring a change in a way that change would last or outlast you, outlive you. Yeah. That's what the model is talking about. Now that could relate to different people differently. So in an organization and to a new recruit, just walking into their first job, that 9 steps actually would relate to them up to the time where they get the next promotion. Right. So it's not about their whole life. Right. And the book actually addresses that. Then if you are in management, it would relate differently. So within the organization itself, depending on your position or on your kind of your maturity level or seniority, this book would relate differently. But at the same time, it would relate differently, for example, if you were to bring it into education and address students. So the uniqueness here is that we are able to customize it to the need of that particular segment. So we do have something called the transformational quotient, which is a tool we have developed, which is actually looking at the readiness of a person to change their environment. So by doing that, we are able to understand the level of readiness in that person. That gives us an idea of what they are strong and what they are weak in. That gives like a recipe, like an initial, like a blueprint for us to start developing them. The same holds true for an organization as well. We can look at the readiness of the organization to transcend or to transform their environment. So there's a process in this.
If I may add
Sure.
to that, there are what you your question was that people cannot be fitted into one box. So there are people go through different life experiences depending on their life stage. Now that is a unique aspect a person brings in. Likewise, organization also has a life cycle. We also take that into consideration. But the book, why it is so relatable, is that we are, as much as we talk about that very sort of fluid, changing environment of a person, we also talk about what is very universal for all of us, and these are character strengths that we have as human beings. So this book, the certain chapters, we talk about certain human character traits that anyone could relate to. And we encourage the reader to take some of these things, to ponder upon it, and to see how they can become role models in their society, in their families. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to ensure that what you know is going to be transferred to the next generation.
Very quickly, I want to ask this question from the both of you. I'll start off with you, Rozaine. How ready is Sri Lanka for something like this?
I want to be optimistic. I think we are ready because this book is about us. It's about being human. It's about love. It's about failure. It's about ambition. It's about loss. So I feel anyone could relate to it. So I think we are ready for this.
I think we are ready for it. And I think we are ready particularly because there's a leadership vacuum at the moment. If you look at it, people are looking for the right kind of leadership. And there's inherently in us that would resonate with good leadership. We believe that this book can contribute towards developing better leaders, and people would rise up to that challenge and respond to this.
Finally, to the both of you all, a message that you all have to the general public who will be able to go through this book very soon, obtain it from the places that you mentioned along the show. What is the message that both of you all have? I'll start with Pujitha.
I think to me, I come back to the transformation we need in our country. And I really believe that Sri Lanka is ready. And all it takes is for us to want to connect with other people towards a cause, a purpose that is larger than ourselves. In a way, it will benefit people. And I think if we can simplify that message to wherever we are at, I can change my environment with others to make it better for everybody. If we can do that together, I believe our country will be at a much different level.
Probably my message would be, as much as performance, skill, competence is important, character is very important for a leader. So my message would be, try and ask yourself how you could be a role model for our future generations, for our children, because then it's only then we could envision a better tomorrow for our children.
Thank you very much both for being here with us. It's very interesting to talk to you as authors and as individuals who are psychologists and life coach as well. So thank you very much for watching Newsline this morning. This book is now available in all the locations Rozaine mentioned a short while ago. So feel free to go and grab a copy of this book and go through Rockstars, and you might be able to find something interesting here that you might attract yourself to. Thank you very much for watching. That's all from Newsline. I've been Chathuranga Hapuarahchchi. Take care.